The ugly. The grass is different, not greener, sometimes downright ugly. Hi, my name is Sue Shawmans, and wherever you are in the world, welcome to my channel. Thanks for being here. In this video, I'm going to share my experiences of life abroad. This time, the experiences that I have labelled as ugly. The majority fall under life's most stressful situations. So death of a relative, divorce, separation, or in my case, a long distance relationship, ill health, and finding work. And this time, rather than focus on the experiences by country, I'm focusing on the subject matters one at a time. So let's start. The first one doesn't fall into any of those categories. This one is about safety and security. I recall one evening walking home, having been socialising with friends on a night out. It was dark, it was late, and I sensed I was being followed, and I was. At one point, whoever it was, and I have no idea to this day, the person grabbed me from behind. And don't ask me, I have no idea, but I just mustered up the strength from within to brush the person off and escape. I ran like crazy to my apartment, and when I got inside, I was shaking like a leaf. It was horrible, and it could have been really nasty. But I did manage to escape. But the lesson from this is as simple as this, which is don't walk home alone in the dark, basically. Always make sure that you've got somebody with you. So that was the first experience, and that was under what I would class as safety and security. Make sure that you feel safe wherever you are and whatever you're doing, even in daylight hours, to be fair. Next, let's move on to death of a relative. In the 23 years that I've lived abroad, several members of my family have passed. I suppose that's understandable within that period of time. Your grandma's just passed. All the family are here. We'll ring you back later. The phone went dead. That news was jolting beyond belief. I was home alone at the time, and I just cried and I wept until the tears ran dry. I knew that she was ill. The last time that I'd seen her, I went to see her in a care home, actually, and I sensed at that point that that was going to be the last time that I saw her, and I was not wrong. But still, the news is devastating, and particularly when you know that you're not there, but the rest of the family are there. So you feel very alone and helpless. Not long afterwards, I got on a flight and went to the funeral, supported Mum with the organising of that, and then got stuck into dealing with her will, honouring her wishes, because I had been nominated as the executor of the will. And that's no easy task when you live abroad, because you're no longer resident in the country that is your homeland, and you're kind of attempting to work with authorities that don't really know who you are anymore. So it makes it doubly challenging. But thankfully I got through it. I learnt the lesson that in future I would instruct a solicitor if I was the executor, or find another way. But I did get through all the paperwork and sat down with the family and went through what her wishes were and what each person would be inheriting. The following passing was that of my biological father, who died of metastasized cancer. This time I received the news via email. My aunt, his sister, had been trying to get hold of me by telephone, but it just hadn't worked for whatever reason. So I got the news by mail, and this time I was extremely shocked. Yes, I knew that he had cancer, but I wasn't really aware how serious it was. And maybe that's because I perhaps didn't listen well enough, because I was also starting my own cancer journey, the first diagnosis, or maybe he hadn't shared really the seriousness of it with me. And I was informed that prior to his death that he was being discharged from hospital, and I thought, great, he's going home to recover. But actually no, he was going home to die. So that was shocking, to say the least. He had left Mum and I when I was 3, so we had a very splintered relationship, and that is made worse when you live abroad, because you don't have the regular contact that you would have if you are in your homeland. So he passed, and on the day of the funeral I couldn't go back to the funeral to pay my respects and say a final farewell. So I sat on our terrace and just wept, because that was not only losing him, but also recognising that the splintered relationship was now never going to be repaired. That chapter was, that book, if you like, was closed. And I couldn't go because actually the day of the funeral was the day just before I was starting my own radiotherapy treatment. The next family member passing was that of my stepfather. He died of a brain tumour. Fortunately, I had actually seen him a couple of weeks earlier to celebrate his 80th birthday, when we managed to get him outside in the garden and just have a little party with a few family members, so that was nice. The phone call came from Mum on the day before we were actually due to go on holiday here in the Netherlands. So we spent a couple of days away, but cut the holiday short, of course, and then I travelled back to the UK to assist Mum with the funeral arrangements and also to get through the paperwork. There were over 100 people attended his funeral. He was a very popular guy and missed by many, to say the least. Mum and I started to work through the paperwork, but it all got too much. We were very much emotional and just decided, let's just pass this on to a solicitor, and that's what we did. So that helped in terms of us being able to manage the situation better. In the end, of course, I had to leave Mum and return back to the Netherlands, and this was a big change for her, because after 40 years she was then having to live alone and adjust to a new life. Next passing was my uncle. He died very suddenly. On this occasion I couldn't attend the funeral, but I did attend via webinar. I wasn't well enough to go back to the UK, so that was as good as it could get without physically being there to say goodbyes. And the most recent one was the passing of my aunt, who died within 6 weeks of liver and lung cancer. And there I did manage to get back and to attend the funeral, say goodbye, and to spend time with family. So yeah, losing family members can put a big jolt in your life, because you're realizing that you are losing people back home one by one, and how you manage those situations can be challenging, because you're there at a distance. Sometimes you might not actually be able to go to the funeral, so you need to find another way of doing that. And sometimes you might be the executor of the will, so think about how you would process all that from a distance. Moving on to ill health. In December 2015, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The news was devastating, completely came as a shock, and the news actually came after a biopsy on the 28th of December, over the Christmas period, via voicemail. How do you deal with that news, number one, and how do you deal with it when you haven't got family around you? Yes, my husband was with me, but the rest of the family were in another country. That was tough. On January the 12th, I was in hospital having a lumpectomy. This just all happened so quickly. And following this, I was on 25 radiotherapy treatments, one day after another. At this point, I was completely wiped out, knowing that I was physically ill, but also the emotions were wearing me down, because it's hefty news to take on board. You've got this alien in your body that had never been invited in the first place, and it's making you seriously ill. And here you are on a program of medical treatment aimed to remove the cancer and get you better. So following this, I was subsequently off work, sick for a number of months, and yes, I did go back to work for a couple of hours a day, a couple of days a week, but even that was just so tiring with all the treatment. So in essence, that put an end to my career in Norway, but it also ended because we decided to relocate to Netherlands. In 2022, I received news that the cancer had actually returned. I was told this time I would have a mastectomy, I would go again through radiotherapy treatment, and I would have chemo. Really? No, I absolutely didn't want that. I was just so exhausted, so weak. And again, with no family members around. Fortunately, or unfortunately, however you look at this, it was then soon after discovered that the cancer had already spread. It has spread to the lung lymph. So the process, the treatment procedure was then scrapped because there was nothing, I was told there was nothing more that they could do. This cancer is then treatable but not curable. So here's a pill, and you take this for the rest of your life, or as long as the pill continues to work. This happened towards the end of the COVID-19 period, and it was 3 months later when my mum was able to visit to support me, because by this time I was just a wreck. Emotions were so heavy that I could barely walk. My legs were so heavy with the emotional strain on the whole situation. But she came to visit, which was great, towards the end of the pandemic. The other thing that gets very ugly is understanding the medical terminology, because medical terminology in your own native language is difficult enough unless you studied biology and you're in that profession. But when you're looking at it in a foreign language, it's just horrendous. So it's important to get support to talk you through what's happening, and ask just to slow the process down, because you're just kind of thrown on this conveyor belt. We do this, and then we do this, and you're wondering what is going off, and what are they doing, because I'm not understanding the language thoroughly. So that's my extremely challenging experiences with regard to ill health. I'm doing well now, actually. I wouldn't be sat here, of course, would I, if that wasn't the case. So yeah, that's my experience of ill health. Now let's move on to profession. Following countless applications, I was sometimes offered an interview, invited to an interview. But let me tell you, on these occasions, it was not a pretty picture. It was really damned ugly. And to summarise this, I just felt used, if not used and abused. So on one occasion, I went to the interview and I was being told I wasn't being interviewed for the job that I prepared for, that I'd applied for, because I wasn't the right candidate for it. Well, maybe you could have told me that before I came for the interview. But we're going to interview you anyway. We're just going to have a chat with you and see if there's anything else that we consider is suitable for you that may come up in the future. Great. You can imagine how my motivation dropped within the interview, and then you just don't perform at all. I took that. I felt insulted, and I took that as a message of, you just want to sit down with me here and you want to suck information out of me in terms of my background, international HR experience. I was not happy. On another occasion, I was invited to not one, not two, not three, not 4, but 5 interviews for one job. And guess what happened? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I heard nothing. No, thank you for attending all these interviews. At least I would have expected that. And a no. And definitely no feedback. So, yeah, again, I really felt that was insulting. And even more so because this is a profession. I was being interviewed for a HR manager's job. They should be setting the example. Hello, is this how you treat your employees or potential employees? No, I'm absolutely glad that I didn't go forward and was offered the job there. Of course I was disappointed, but if that's how you treat people, So that to me was a complete and utter joke. And again, I just felt that I was being sucked of information for the benefit of the organisation. Not happy. So those circumstances were very, very ugly. Leading on from this, because I was just getting no's and I had a few interviews but didn't get anything from that, I just said, I'm done here. This was actually in Norway. So I repatriated back to the UK. I'd had 3 interviews and got 3 job offers. Okay, that tells you something. My husband chose not to come with me. He chose to continue working in Norway. Absolutely fine. But of course it put a strain on our relationship. We were living a long distance relationship. Yes, we were commuting to see one another every couple of weeks, but that was tough. And also there's an expense involved in that when you're flying backwards and forwards. So emotionally that was not easy. Plus I realised really quickly that I had made a mistake. I'd picked the wrong job. And I'd picked the wrong organisation. Neither were a match for me, and I should have known better by this stage, but I was just so elated by the fact, I've got a job offer and I'm going to pick this one because it seems to be the best company and the best job out of the 3, but no. And the problem was I couldn't quit because I tied myself into a rental agreement for a number of months. So had I quit, I would then have been paying thousands of pounds out to get out of the rental agreement, and that just was not going to happen. So how I got through the following months, I have no idea, but my heart was not in the job. I was heavy, my performance was rubbish, because I just didn't want to be there. So all in all, that period in the UK was just a complete and utter disaster, not only for me career-wise, but also for our relationship, which of course took a serious hammering. Now back to my career at this stage, because I've run my business on a number of occasions, and that is also not easy abroad. Yes, I mentioned that setting up a business within the Netherlands is easy, but getting clients is not that easy. Yes, I was fortunate in the first instance to get clients, but gaining clients when you don't necessarily have a big network and you don't know how the intricacies of things work in a new country, that can create a lot of blocks for you and difficulties to grow your business. the message here is that you need to tap into the local people as much as possible. They may be working with your ideal customers, or they may know somebody who is working with your ideal customers. In my instance, that's expats, immigrants, internationals, asylum seekers, etc. Perseverance is the message with this one, along with working through your network that hopefully you've established by this stage, and getting to speak to people face to face. Boy, is that difficult these days. Everything's done through the internet, and all you want to do is meet with somebody and sit down face to face to explain what you do, and is there any way that you can sell your products or your services through that organisation. So there are my experiences, the ones that I've labelled as ugly related to career, but tapped into that was this long distance relationship because I could not find suitable work within the country that I was living in. What choice did I have? Yeah, well, I chose to repatriate, and that didn't turn out too well, not only in terms of organisation and job, but also because of the strain on our relationship. Before I close off this video, I'd like to share with you a few extracts from my book that reinforce the experiences that are classed as ugly, deeply challenging, very difficult situations that you may find yourself in when you're living abroad. So first of all, death of a relative. In my book, I put, I never got to say goodbye. When a family member dies, you suffer from guilt. I certainly did when you're living abroad. The pain of not having been with them in the lead up to their passing is the first issue, and that's tough enough. But then sometimes you're not able to travel to say your final goodbyes. Because you might not be able to get time off work, you might not be able to afford to go, and therefore you're not able to pay your final respects, and you're not able to be with family to celebrate their life, so to speak, all of that. So I never got to say goodbye, whether that's physical, saying goodbye knowing that they're dying, or never got to say goodbye, your final goodbye at the funeral. That's challenging, and it does create great grief. Separation, divorce. In my situation, this was about a long-term relationship. Quote from my book, I don't fit in here. I'm moving back home, which is what happened in my situation. And this might be because you're suffering from culture shock. You really just don't like the host country where you are. It might be that you can't find work, which is exactly what happened to me. Then what choice do you have? Do you stay where you are? And yeah, maybe you can't because you need to earn some money. So what choice do you really have? And of course, in this situation, I chose to repatriate, but that was difficult because I've not necessarily picked the right organisation or the right job, but also it was a strain on our relationship, and a costly strain because of having to, we had the ability to commute to see one another on a regular basis, but you might not be able to do that if you're living further apart from one another. And I know many people that have chosen that, and they might not see one another for months in a long distance relationship. So that's challenging. The next one is about ill health. Quote from my book, I knew something was wrong, but I chose to ignore the signs. And this is exactly what happened with the second diagnosis with me. I sensed something was wrong and actually could see a lump appearing. The thing is, you know your body more than anyone else, and I cannot stress enough, if something doesn't feel right, the chances are it isn't right. So follow your intuition. Get to see a medical professional as soon as possible to at least put your mind at rest in the situation, or maybe you need some medical treatment. Also, let's not forget this medical terminology situation. I asked to record meetings so that I could go away and re-listen to what had been said and understand what had been said in meetings. But you also might want to take a translator if they're not proficient either in your own native tongue, or if you understand English, ask them to explain things in English. So yeah, that's ill health. Then finally moving on to finding work. Quote from my book: "What will I do when I relocate? Can I work?" I know in some people who relocate, they can't work because they don't have the right to work. They haven't got a working visa. So you need to think about, what is it that you will do when you relocate abroad? Or what is it that you're going to do when you're out of work? Perhaps you've quit your job or been made redundant when you're abroad. What are you going to do next? This I can't emphasize enough, which is to do your homework. Do the homework on the country that you're relocating to. Do the homework in terms of the organisation or organisations where you would like to work, and do your homework with regard to the job itself. This is the last video of a series of 3, the good, the bad and the ugly of life abroad, based on my experiences. What will follow this series is a new set of videos. There are going to be 4 videos where I share my top tips about international careers. So in terms of finding work, you might want to look out for those. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on those. So those are my living abroad experiences, the ones that I have classed as ugly, basically because they were extremely difficult to deal with and extremely challenging. There was nothing really easy about any of them. Yes, there are some positive things that came out of it in terms of learnings, but when you're in those situations, it is downright difficult. I really hope that you've enjoyed these series of videos. For this one, if you'd like the video, please like, comment, share and subscribe so you don't miss out on the future ones. Until the next time, take care, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.